Okay. Good. Good morning, everyone. My name is Olanike Adeoye, the lead host for today's webinar. On behalf of the SPE Lagos Section Chair, Ogogo Effiong, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar on leveraging data to enable the true digital transformation. Our guest speaker today is Mr. Dipo Ashafa, who will be showing us how to leverage data to enable us to get the right results that we desire on time. Regarding today's webinar, so in recent years, digital transformation has become one of the more foretold levers to pivot traditional companies in a traditional industry into the new age of efficiency and productivity. Companies like Facebook, Google, Uber, and Airbnb have been cited as perfect examples of companies that have opted to ride the digital wave into prosperity. So today, this presentation seeks to diagnose the foundational elements of digital transformation with a distinct focus on data literacy. It will illustrate the steps any small or large business must take to set itself up for sustainable process. So our host for today is no one else but Mr. Dipo Ashafa, who is a digital business opportunity manager with Royal Dutch Shell Global Asset Management Excellence Organization. He's an energy professional with 13 years of upstream and midstream experience across US, Nigeria, UAE, and the Netherlands. He's an alumnus of the University of Oklahoma and Area Watch University. So today, let's pay attention and eliminate any sources of distraction so that we can maximize value from today's webinar. So thank you very much, Mr. Ashafa. So I'll hand over to you for your presentation.
Thanks, Nike. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for dialing into this webinar. I'm glad you've been able to take some time out of your busy schedules to make this. Special thanks to the Lagos section for allowing me this privilege to speak with you today. All right, so I want to talk to you about digital transformation, yeah? And not to sell the benefits, yeah, but to actually talk about what this means, right? And break it down into two words, yeah, to show what, basically discuss what digital is and transformation and how one enables the other and how that's made possible through the power of data. You know, at the end of this session, I hope that you would be able to distinguish between what transformation and digital transformation is. And I would hope that you would have a more clear understanding of how data enables that, which would lead you to have more respect for your data, which is something that's a very passionate thing for me, right? So let's begin. In terms of the agenda, I'll start off by just setting the scene, yeah, you know, grounding us in the now. Then we'll move to the meat of the matter, yeah, talk about digital transformation. First with the basics, right? Ground us all in some process thinking. Three things: process, data, systems is what I personally believe underpins any type of transformation. Then we'll get practical, and I won't dive too far into it, but I'll give an overlay of how this applies to the oil and gas industry. Then we'll go into the questions and answers. But before I get started, I want to ask the audience questions. Two questions particularly. The first is what data means to you. I think, Nika, you have the Menti on standby. If you could switch to that and let the audience get a brief of that. And the next question will follow: what does digital transformation mean? So let's start off with what data means to you.
Yes, we have it.
Okay.
Please go to menti.com, www.menti.com, and use the code 238332. We'd like you to participate to make this very interactive and to maximize value from today's webinar. Please participate. The code again is 238332.
Max. Okay, that's a good one. Looking for more statistics. Okay. Sounds like that came from a data scientist. They're coming to fore now. Power, ability. Okay. Okay. Information. Yeah. People ask the question, is information data or is data information? Big topic of debate. Intelligence. Okay. Well, we'll just take a couple more so we don't stay on this for too long before going to the next. Yeah, but I'm going to write down a few things. Okay. Info. Insights. Yeah, it's like the internet's just kicking in. Insights. All right, that's good. So we see people, information seems to be a common theme, statistics, facts, variables, power. You know, see some people going into detail, quantitative variables. I don't know if I said facts, no, cash. That's an interesting one, but yeah. Yeah, all right, let's, okay, if we can move to the second question, right, we'll come back to what this means, but if we move to the second question on essentially what digital transformation means to you, I want to see, I want to get the audience taking this as well. Okay. We have some data scientists in the room. Machine learning, which is what I assume ML means, and artificial intelligence. Yeah. Shall we give it a moment for it to heat up like the other one? I think it took about 2-3 minutes. Unless, of course, people are wondering what digital transformation means to them, then perhaps you've come into the right place. Oh. Okay. So, all right. So, seeing we have mathematical models, data science, tech, ML, tech to disrupt, IoT, Internet of Things, new age. Okay. Yeah. So all the pretty cool things, cool tools, gadgets. Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. All right, so let's come back to it. So the audience, I mean, in terms of what data means, I think we have a clear understanding that it's information, it's power, it's insights, it's intelligence, things that underpin analysis. And when we speak about technology, we talk about data science, you know, enhancing value, creating business. Quite clearly, you see a link between the two. If you're going to enhance value, you have to know the value. If you're going to create business, you need to quantify what that means. Data science is nothing without data. Mathematics and mathematical models are just a series of ones and zeros converted into outcomes. Yeah. And the Internet of Things and machine learning run on data. AI breeds on data. So yeah, it's good grounding. All right, let's go back to the presentation. Thanks for providing input. Shows that we have a fairly knowledgeable crowd, and I'm going to have to do a lot to up my game because I don't think I'll be able to get anything past you guys. All right, so I'm going back to our presentation. Let me just make sure I have you guys in view. Let's start off by looking at the state of the world, right? So this is a view from 2001 to 2016, right? So if you look at the companies that were leading, the companies that had the large value and revenue output in 2001, you'd see a mixed part. So GE, that does everything. Microsoft, powered by Windows. The oil and gas industry is there with Exxon, and the banks, Citi and Walmart was consumer goods. Now let's fast forward and we'll just skip through a couple levels. So you see in 2006, the oil and gas industry is reigning supreme. Total joins Exxon there. GE is still there. Microsoft still powered by Windows and Citi. But something starts to change at the beginning of the decade, right? We're down when we still have the oil and gas industry, and there's two companies there. But Apple comes on, and this is shortly after launching the iPhone and the iPads coming up. So it's heating up, right? So you can see one tech company pops back in. Microsoft's just around the corner at number 5 or number 6 or 7, and then in 2016, there's some type of rapid acceleration where the top 5 companies now are tech companies. It's Apple riding high on their products in their ecosystem. It's Alphabet, which is, in other words, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and Facebook. So it would surprise. You see it here, but when we start quantifying in terms of the valuation of the company, not much has changed. GE at 406 billion in 2001 led the way, and in 2016, it's essentially Apple at roughly just under 600 billion, which is maybe just under a 20% growth. But what will shock you is to learn that between 2016 and 2020, Apple's valuation went up from 528 billion roughly to over $1 trillion, right? And Amazon and the others are right by there. So it shows the rapid transformation on an incremental basis year after year, and the exponential growth from 2016 onwards. That's talking about this, and these companies are fueled by these are tech companies that are fueled by data. If you read the Economist magazine, that was launched, I think, was it March of 2017, where they talk about data being the new oil. Kind of gives some insights to this. Now let's switch base a little bit and talk about disruption and how business is responding to this. So there was a study that was kicked off in 2017 at the behest of senior executives, essentially to get a better understanding of what big data means, right? So a pool of CEOs and other senior executives were polled to find out what essentially drives their fears in terms of anticipated disruption. About half of them said artificial intelligence. Quarter said digital tech. An eighth said financial tech. And then there was cloud computing and blockchain. So you can see it weighs heavily on the minds of business executives. But truth be told, none of this can happen without one thing. And what do you think it is? What do they all have in common? Go back to it, and I'll say it over and over today. It's data, right? And it's not just data for data's sake. It's data to baseline, and we'll speak more about this. Baseline, where you are. Data to set your ambition. What is your target? Data to measure the point A to B and the different stages to measure the effectiveness of whatever you're trying to do. And to manage data, to manage your work process. So let's actually talk about management of data, or how data manages you. So imagine you're driving on 3rd Mainland Bridge, right? And you just got on it, you're heading to the mainland, right? And you just got on it, and you see your fuel light come on, shows you're about to run out of petrol. What's your behavior then? Do you crack down your window? Do you turn off your AC? Do you stop accelerating and decelerating? That's the power of data and how data manages you if you don't manage it. Okay? And reporting data. Yeah, I mean, reporting data is as simple as your report card. Yeah. So you have a report card. You get all A's. You get to share it. You get all F's. You get to share it. All right. So I'll give you some practical things in my industry. There was a survey conducted, yeah, and this survey showed the impact on data on how we work. So 60% of engineers focused on operations, yeah, are affected by poor data, right? And then if you translate this to what this means in life, do you want to operate a well without understanding what your pressure is? Do you want to drill without good poor pressure prediction? No. Do you want to drill a well without a solid understanding of the subsurface? No, right? The thing is, 30% of the people that responded to the survey said they couldn't find the data they needed to carry out their work within 15 minutes. And I think this resonates with a lot of people, including myself, right? I mean, as a reservoir engineer, current reservoir engineer, you breed on data to basically convert into outcomes. And if you can't find the data you need, then you go from being an engineer to an analyst because you're chasing data, right? Now, the last point, which I won't stay on too long, is essentially 80% of engineers, can't find the latest drawings. Sorry, let me adjust that. And if we bring it to something that's more practical, imagine you're doing a remodeling of a house, yeah, right? And well, before you start, you want to get a firm view of your blueprints, your structure, so you know what walls to take down and bring up, right? And then you look at your blueprint and it says there's a wall here, and you walk over to that wall, and that wall doesn't exist. Imagine the feeling there. And this scenario is transversal across all industries, right? 80%, that's a high number. And that's a number that can result in loss of income, loss of revenue, which is the same thing, and loss of life, right? So I want to get into what digital transformation means now that I've spoken about data, right? So digital transformation, right? So imagine you're a senior executive at a company and you've been given, let's say, $3 million to transform the company. Your CEO is one of those executives that is concerned with big data and how it's going to disrupt your industry and says, go. What do? You install Wi-Fi, put a GPS on everything so you can track it. You get a smartwatch, give your people iPads. Do you buy drones? Do you invest in blockchain? Even though you may not know what that means. No, because if you're doing these things, then you're doing digital for the sake of digital, and you're not doing it to improve your business. You're just doing it to keep up with the times. What you actually need is to actually ground yourself in the norms of transformation, which is you are here and you want to move to a second point, right? And you have an objective and a target, right? And that's your ambition and a high, you can call it a North Star. There's a very good book about this. It's 4 Disciplines of Execution. I have it right here. It's something that you can read. It really talks about this transformation in terms of the steps and what you require. So let me take you through this, right? It's not about the tools, the technology, or whatever. It's first of all being at a point A and moving to a point B. So transform. You want to transform. Let's discuss the different types of transformation you can have. Maybe the first one's about operational efficiency and performance. And it's, I want more production. I want my facilities to be up longer for better runtime. I want fewer incidents. I want technical costs, right? It could also be transforming your culture, right? So I want an energized workforce, improved productivity. I don't want any bullying. I don't want any harassment. I want a company that follows the rule, and I want a company that people enjoy to come to every day. You could also have organizational transformation, where you're looking at your resourcing model and strategy. Do you want more people on staff, right? So you have a steady state of operations, or do you want to be swinging up and down with consultants and contractors so you can ride the wave of the market like service companies do, right? Do you want an organization where the gap between your CEO to your frontline workers is maybe 1 or 2 levels of separation, so that person can get to the truth? Or do you want to, again, increase that gap because your CEO is overwhelmed with how many people they have to speak to? And do you want to transform leadership? Right? There's an interesting book I read about intent-based leadership. Forgive me, I have some of these books here that I'll show you. So this is Turn the Ship Around, right? So it speaks about a submarine captain or commander, right, that gets onto a nuclear sub, right? So he's coming into this sub that he has no level of knowledge or understanding of. He's not been trained to run this, but he's an emergency appointee. He gets there, and the people, the sailors on there ask him what they need to do, right? He's there first minute, and people ask him what they need to do. And in this reality, that's not essentially what you want to happen. You have people who've been working there for 15 years. So you want to transform your workforce to think with intent and to understand what they need to do while the leader backs them up. So that's a type of transformation, right? And then there's a reputational, so you want to, again, maybe whitewash your image. You want to go from being a negative company like some of the oil and gas companies were back then and some of the tech companies are right now, or you want a brand recognition. You want people to think like when I was growing up, Omo, right? I said Omo is soap. Soap is Omo. Do you want that recognition, or do you want to be the industry standard? Sort of like how the SPE is today when we talk about oil and gas industry and helping to shape policy. Okay, so these are the ways. What you won't see here is digital, right? Because digital to me is not a transformation type. It's an enabler of this transformation. It's a separate stream that cuts across all. So imagine these first 5 has really wavy roads and digital has the means to cut across. Yep. Yeah. So let's make this really simple and practical, right? So I'll talk to you about process, data, and system. So everything has a process in life, right? You have multiple processes you go through the day. I have one. So this is my simple process, or my simple process a few years ago in getting up and going to work. A 10-step process, from waking up to brushing my teeth, having my bath, to making my food, eating my food, watching the news, to be aware, to commuting to work, and logging on, right? So you feel it. Yeah, I mean, you feel you get up at a certain time and you get to work at a certain time, but you never quite measure it. But what you do know is maybe sometimes you're hurried. Sometimes you wake up too soon. Sometimes you get to work too late. To change this, right? To fix, optimize, and transform this, first you have to baseline, right? And get the data. And this is where it's important. So this is my attempt to put some data behind my process. I get up at 6 and I get to work at 8. It takes 2 hours and it takes 1,100 naira, right? And that's on the brace principle. Now I start looking at the different steps and breaking them out into sub steps, right? So brushing my teeth, so lived in when I started working PH, I lived in an apartment that had challenges with running water, right? So you get a bowl of water to wash brush your teeth. I mean, it might be pure water, it might be regular, whatever. And then you get a bucket of water that you would have to go outside to get. Cost me 30 minutes every morning, right? I'd make my breakfast. Look, I like yam and egg. That's guilty, right? More water for tea, my tea, and go through that process. So looking at that process at face value looks normal, right? But in understanding how much time, how much money, how much effort I'm spending on each day, I was able to first visualize an optimized scenario, then get really bold and predict a transformative scenario. So I want to transform this process, right? So first, let's try and optimize What happens if I don't get the water the day before? Might cut some time, shaves off 15 minutes or 10 minutes actually. What happens if I eat my food while watching the news as opposed to just eating on the dining table, then moving to the living room? I shave up some time. What happens if I use a taxi now instead of driving to work, right? I might pay a little bit more for the taxi than my fuel costs, but what happens is I don't have to pay parking and I don't have to spend 10 minutes looking for parking, right? What Let's say if I go on step 9 and I sacrifice going up the elevator and I decide, I mean, go up the stairs and say, let me use the elevator. I sacrifice my exercise, but I get up quicker, right? Step 10, there's nothing I can do, right? I have a slow PC. You turn it on, it takes 5 minutes. Nothing you can do, right? So you realize what you can do, what you can optimize, what you can't, and how you deal with it. In this process, I shaved up some time, right? So what I've done is, sorry, I'm going to move this for a second. The computer's in the way. What I've done is basically I've reduced the time by about 39 minutes, and I've reduced about 250 naira. So yeah, roughly 20-30% off both, right? So let's now think creatively. How do I just disrupt this? So I'm not optimizing each step. I'm going to change things around and disrupt my process. Right. So how about I invest in a different apartment that has running water, right? Might cost something, yeah. How I get an electric toothbrush? Now this is applying technology based on the data I have, right? I mean, it reduces that time. So I go from my initial estimate of 30 minutes down to 13. Yeah. Now, how I switch my process breakfast. I'm not doing yam and egg anymore. I want to be a healthy individual, so I'm going to make a smoothie. Smoothie requires cheaper ingredients and is a lot quicker to do. Just put and blend and move on, right? So I save time there. Then I combine steps 5, 6, 7, 8. So first I would eat, watch TV, drive to work, park. Now I just catch an Uber where I consume my smoothie on my way to work. I don't have to park anymore. And then I have a smartphone where I can watch my news or listen to my news or read my news. Preference depends on what you are. Yeah. Same scenario where I take the elevator up, but if I'm lucky, my company that I work for invest in new tech, a Mac with Retina scan, then it might reduce my 5 minute login time to 0 because I push a button, computer comes on, it scans my Retina. Now that last step 10 is a trap. If you're going to invest in a new Mac so you can reduce your login time by 5 minutes, that's a poor investment, right? So you have to calculate the gains versus the cost to know if your transformation works, right? So this is my step. And then this is now what has happened today, where the process is completely disrupted by COVID, and it takes 6 minutes for me to get to work, right? So get up, shower, should be 16 minutes, not 6. I get up, I shower, I brush my teeth, make my food, and I walk over to my desk. So that you shave up a lot of time. But that's with your internet and the electric bill goes up. But that's that. So we talked about it in a more generic term, and I just want to ground you in there. But now let's talk about it in terms of a company. So this is a company X, right? That has 100 wells spread over 500 kilometers, right? All right. So 20% of the wells can't be accessed, right? Yeah. So they have limited information, and that's just due to the terrain and the security concerns, etc. Right? All right. Then most of the wells, right? You have to drive roughly 50 kilometers to get to, just because, and you have to do that every day because you don't have any automated gauges, you don't have a proper flow of data, so you have to go and manually acquire, right? And because you don't have that, you don't have steady operations plans, right? And then to combine this, because you don't really have a flow, complete control of your business, you don't really know how much you need in terms of spares and what kind of area you need to sort this. So basically, your contracting thing is your contracting practices are out of sort. You have poor inventory, right? And and when you have that, you basically have to rush order everything. And I heard a story about how if you rush order things, freight order things to an FPSO, it might cost you $20,000 or $30,000 extra to do for an item that might cost $1,000. You start paying for things at a premium, right? Yeah. And again, this is a factor that's not controllable by the company. It's poor roads, poor infrastructure. So they can actually optimize the time taken to drive if they continue their same practices, right? So as a result, you see these things, there's a gap between daily production rates and what's expected, right? So this scenario is a company that's ripe for transformation, right? And so again, the first step right now isn't to throw tech at it and say, let's get iPads, let's get this, let's get that. The first step is to understand, the issues, kind of visualize what kind of optimized scenario that you're looking at, or what transformative scenario you're looking at. Go through the different processes, identify themes, and get after it. I saw this problem statement a couple of weeks ago, and okay, this last week I took a stab at what this could mean, right? And I said, look, if you have a theme, right, and you highlight the theme, right, 20% of the world's enough flowing, right? Let's assume the field has a potential of 50,000 barrels. Again, you need data to ground and make these assumptions valid, right? 20% is 10,000 barrels a day. That's $4 million a day of revenue that's lost, right? Right. And if you are not able to access your wells, okay, you're losing your product, right? But you're also at high risk because people can tamper with your stuff and there's no way for you to know. Yeah, you leave her, engage the community, maybe, right? So you can strike that out as maybe a non-technical fix, right? The second thing, logistics, right? If you're driving that much, then people are at risk. There will be more road safety incidents because you're driving long distances on poor roads, right? Okay. And to mitigate that, you're going to be hiring more drivers, training and retraining drivers, so that is a cost, right? And because of the poor roads, you're going to be running and maintaining your roads more and more and more, right? And you're buying more fuel, right? Then your poor operating practices, which stem from a lack of data, means, look, you will have equipment failure. And some of that equipment failure will lead to oil spilling, which could lead to an explosion, right? You will be buying a bunch of spares without an actual idea of how many you need and how many you don't. And when you do that, you will be rush ordering it. So you may be spending $1 million a year. And what that ultimately leads to is you will have downtime. And that stems from two things. That stems from your wells going down, your facilities going down, right? Which is a loss. And then them staying down for an extended period of time because you probably don't have the proper supply chain and maintenance processes to bring it down. So if you look at the business outcome study, so you have loss of production, safety, costs, and yeah, that's it. So these are the things that now become your baseline to improve, and you then highlight the processes which are relevant. Most companies have a set of processes. If I take the average oil and gas company, I mean, there's a process for operations, there's a process for logistics, a process for safety. It could be road safety, process safety, technical safety. I don't know how you mix it. And there's also a process for maintaining to reduce your short-term, long-term deferment, scheduled and unscheduled, and also supply chain. So you process it in that way, and you're looking at the outcome. So if I want to reduce driving or road exposure, maybe then I start looking at the technology that can help. Maybe I start looking at having automated gauges, yeah. Maybe I start looking at then drones now, right? Where you can take three-dimensional pictures on a recurrent basis and makes it 4D, so you can actually see what's happening, right? So you're getting the data stream, you're visually able to see the well, and that will reduce the drivers, the number of drivers you need and the number of driving, limit the operators to essentially be more reactive to the scenario as opposed to investigating every day. So you see something goes wrong, you're moving out of your operating envelope, you're seeing physical impairments to your well, then they can make the trip out. How you track that progress, if that's the way you go, is another way to justify. If you're driving 50 kilometers a day and you're spending X amount and you implement these tools and technology based on the data that you have, you might see that you drop down to driving an average of 10 kilometers a day, which ultimately should pay for itself because the number one cost there is a risk exposure to your staff. And I think that overweighs any other cost. Yeah. So if you look into operating practices, again, if you implement some technical monitoring, right, then you do know, or you will have an idea of the window to keep your equipment. You'll operate it a little bit better. If you get into being really predictive with your maintenance, having a proper schedule, knowing when things need to be serviced and not, and having the supply chain that backs it up with inventory management, then you can improve. So you want to introduce barcoding to your spares, so you know once one spare is taken and put into use, you know it's time to order another one. You want to have a live active schedule per se. Do you not even want to have inventory? You want to have APIs that connect your storage to your vendor storage, so that can flow automatically. That's where you start applying digital technology. And when you go through this process of you understand, or this thing where you understand your process, your data, you understand the systems that capture your data, the tools that you require, then you can have a sense of how to transform. I am cognizant that I've spoken for a long time, so I'm just going to just go through the steps for you to take. Where are you right now? What is it you're trying to achieve? What's the gap, right? Second step, what are your strategic themes? Maybe it's more production, like the first thing with operational excellence that we talked about, or efficiency, more production, more uptime, fewer safety incidents, lower cost. Then you go into identifying, optimizing, and transforming. And it's, do I fiddle with my chokes? Do I complete drill wells? Do I reduce equipment failure, time to repair? Do I set the no spills, no injuries as a proper work stream that I need to go after? And in terms of cost, which kind of underlines all of it, the cost of goods, equipment, people, materials, and services. So you have that in there from a process, data, systems, people landscape. I haven't mentioned people, and I apologize, for people in everything. With no people, you have nothing, right? I mean, you talk about machines, algorithms, all of that. It's people that program these, right? People that put them in place. Yeah, people will not be replaced. People will be made more efficient by this. All right, so I will pause here. I'll pause here and take some questions, right, before I go on. Does anybody have any questions? Let me look in the chat box to see if there's anything.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ashafa. What a way to open our eyes to digital transformation and how we can actually apply this to our even daily lives. So everyone, it's time. If you can please type your question in the chat room. We'll put that notice there. Please type your questions in the chat room, as this is only the webinar is listen only mode. In the meantime, we've learned a lot. We've learned about data and how digital transformation is fueling revolution. So we've also seen how information quality actually significantly affects engineers' performance negatively in most cases. We've also seen how everything in life is a process, and we need to establish the baseline. So we should put the data behind the process in order to begin the journey of process of transformation. And of course, in that journey, we need to apply technology. And After that, we need to optimize and then transform the process. So the floor is open. Please type in your questions so that the questions can be answered. Please go to the chat room and type your questions. Thank you.
No questions yet. So it's either I put everyone to sleep or perhaps I dealt with it.
We're sinking it in.
Yeah, sorry to hear
So
that.
carry on.
Okay. All right, so let's get back. So if it's easy, if it's so easy, why isn't everybody doing? Well, you would require to work with an enterprise architecture state of mind, which is not common in our industry. Grounding yourself in the process data systems thinking when you build. What I've seen in my experience is you have your processes, which are largely disconnect mechanisms you have, and these are maybe some IT tools that you have or technology that's been put in place, and you have a most companies and most industries have not implemented proper data governance. So if those three are not syncing up, then it makes it really hard to envision what true digital transformation can be and how it's and how those elements can enable it. So but that's my broad level thinking on that, right? Yeah. So in terms of summary, right, and I'll say it again, by placing data, the management of your data, the governance, and integrating so it talks to data talks and speaks a common language across multiple processes is at the cornerstone of any transformation initiatives. Yeah, and then your organization essentially can benefit from that, right, to exponentially grow into a high performing, high valued entity. So where I work, we have a saying that goes, data leads to insights, drives actions, and that ultimately generates value, right? So that's my my ramble on how data leverages, you can leverage data for true digital transformation.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. So any questions? Have any questions come in still, or?
Yeah. Thank you. I actually have a question. Earlier on we talked about the what data means, and people came up with information. So what exactly is the difference between data and information?
Yes. So I mean, data is raw. Information is processed, right? So for you to have information, you first have to see the raw ones, zeros, and make sense of it. So after you've processed, interpreted your data, you can then feed information to whoever requires. At least that's what I think.
Okay. Thank you. So any other question? Since we have some questions now, so we go to how does digital transformation affect sustainability efforts, carbon capture, drilling tech, etc., at companies like Shell? So how does digital transformation affect sustainability efforts?
Okay. Well, I'm not an expert in the field of carbon capture and storage, but essentially, you have to think again from a data-centric lens. Your objective is to reduce your carbon emissions, right? And help build a sustainable world. Before you reduce, you must measure. Before you measure, to measure, you need the proper tools and technology. Like you need the technology of today to help you capture this, transmit it, analyze, and then make recommendations. Yeah. If you look at, there was a statistic I saw, and it said in the oil and gas industry, a large percentage of your emissions can be reduced by proper operating practices. Right. So if you stop flaring, if you optimize your footprint and your logistics, then you will reduce your carbon impact. All these are made possible by data that actually gives you the state of play for your entity. And this is me speaking as an individual that does research.
Okay, thank you very much. We have lots of questions now. So the next question is, in your opinion, what do you think has been the greatest obstacle in applying digital transformation in our industry?
My humble opinion, I think the first step is to understand what digital transformation is. I think there's a lot of hype around it. There's a lot of rush to be digital, and the output always looks prettier than the work that needs to get done. It's an iceberg.
Yeah.
To clean up your data is not the easiest thing, depending on how long your company has been in existence and how big your company is. If you're a multinational company and have a multitude of assets, they all may operate in a different way. They all may classify data differently. They handle data differently, have different tools, have different systems. You could have some companies, some entities in your company using iPads versus others using Galaxy tablets. You could have people using iPhones or Windows phones. You could have people having Windows or having Mac, right? You could have people classify production as unreconciled or production as reconciled. If you don't get those basics right and connect it, then what will happen is you will spend a lot of money on the short term on digital tools. They will not have a sustainable effect. And then you will think digital transformation is not possible or a thing that only Facebook and Google can do, and then you will move on.
Okay, thank you very much. So the next question being asked is, for the future, which skills actually outweigh the other? It seems as though the ability to analyze the need for transformation and the pains of the business is quite important. Is it digital skills or transformational skills? Which one is more important? Your home view.
Well, it's all incremental. And you know, when I got involved in this digital space, what I found is being a petroleum engineer, especially a reservoir engineer, has prepared me more than anyone aside from data scientists to be able to survive in this world. In our industry, we deal with data. We cannot physically see the subsurface 20,000 feet below the ground. We visualize what's there through the three-dimensional models, which essentially are bits of data coupled together and visualized. So the first step is to have an analytical mind, and being a petroleum engineer will do that for you. Next step is continuous improvement. Right. When I was in university, I think the language of the day was base Java, C+. Fortran was at that point going out of style. I mean, today's world, yeah, Python and others. I hadn't kept up. I knew HTML. I could build websites one time in my life. I think the last time I tried was 2006. But I haven't kept up recently. I think probably one of my books here. Here, this is it. Let me flash that there. Automate boring stuff with Python. So you have to continually improve your skill set. So you start with an analytical mind, then you continue to feed that mind. And in terms of transforming the business, any person, even the man or woman selling akara on the road, can transform their business if they look hard enough at it critically and say, this is, you just have to dare to dream. This is where I see myself in the next 5 to 10 years. Then kind of map that accordingly. Again, the book that I spoke about, The Four Disciplines of Execution by Chris Matisney and Sean Colby, would help.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Another question is really for a small scale company that the process of transformation may at times be very expensive, or not very many decision makers believe at such a scale may be helpful in those areas. So how can managers or decision makers who are not really inclined to be made to see such a benefit, and that this is very important if it's worth doing at all? I guess this is about change. How do we want to convince people, to actually be open-minded to be able to implement the change with regards to digital transformation?
Yeah. Okay. No, thanks. I mean, it goes back to what I said at the beginning. Change, you don't change for change itself. You don't go digital just to go digital. That's the easiest way to get laughed out of your MD's office. If you come in saying, well, you need to go digital, what you need to do is ground it in terms of value. At a basis, if you walk into your GM, your MD, your CEO, your vice president's office, yeah, and you say, let's say his name is Jide, and you say, Jide or Mr. Jide, depending on your office culture, say, I have this idea, and I think if properly implemented and embedded into our existing workflow, it can improve our cash flow by 25%. Guess what? Mr. Jide will lean forward and say, continue. But if you walk in there and say, I think everyone needs to have an iPad, then he will lean back and ask you to return to your office.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's the most practical answer I can give. If you don't ground it in value, if not a benefit, let's not be fooled. At the base, every business exists to make money and perhaps return money to the shareholders or the people who own it wholesome.
Okay.
Unless
Thank you very much. Yes. Okay. I think the next question we want to take is, most companies realize they do not have the data they need at the point, but they suddenly want to start some sort of data transformation. What's the best way to encourage companies to invest in data acquisition and storage and overall data management?
Well, I mean, first is you have to understand what data you're looking for. So you start with the outcome that you're looking for, the processes that should enable that outcome, and then the data required to basically get those processes going, to measure the effectiveness of those processes, and to and then the next step would be trying to build an integrated data platform that allows you to have one source of data that's relevant to all the processes that you're dealing with in your workspace. So you have your processes, you figure out what data it is, you integrate that data, and as much as possible, streamline the way that data is viewed. You want a common view. If your company is producing 5,000 barrels a day, you want that view to be unanimous across. You don't want it to be at the engineer's level 4,000, at the MD's level 5,005, and at the GM's level 2,000. You want that data to be integrated and visualized wholesome, and that's the start. That's where everyone has baseline properly, and then you have the foundation for further transformation.
Okay, thank you very much for that. The next question we're taking is actually will be 2 in 1. So, will the engineers of the future require to be a better engineer in the knowledge of the theory of their field, or they should be better programmers? And then the second part is, how can young professionals prepare to be at the forefront of the transformation journey?
Okay. Well,
so the first one is about.
Okay. Yeah. No. I got the first one.
Okay.
You would have to be multi-skilled, right? I mean, if you've gotten anything about what I've said first is grounding everything in the process. And before you can improve a process, you need to be a process practitioner. And these processes of I know best how I go to work every day. So I have a firm knowledge of my step 1 to 10, going back to my previous example. So I can on the fly think about how to improve it. If you're a person who's building simulation models, if you're a person who's maintaining a compressor, if you're a person who's managing a fleet of vehicles, you have to first understand your process, get a view of data so you can analyze it before you improve it. Yeah, so having programming skills will not overshadow being a solid technical professional. At ground zero, you need to know what you're doing. Then you can pay a service provider to come and help kind of link the dots together. But every every piece of work to transform always requires someone in the room that knows what they're doing. If you have a bunch of people with just programming skills, then you will begin to build a utopia that is unproductive.
Okay. Thank you very much. The next question. So thanks for the presentation. Do you have other case studies where going digital has accelerated the company's transformation efforts, maybe in drilling operations? And then still talking about drilling operations. So what do you think is the future for the use of big data in future oil well drilling?
Okay. I mean, I don't have any off the top of my head. I mean, it's more. I think whoever asked the question would be able to get that as quickly as I do by just searching maybe SPE journals, the Way Ahead magazine, and simple Google search. Where I envision the future of drilling is, I think the future might be here now in terms of having automated directional drilling and remote drilling. I know it's I know a certain company that drilled some wells in South America and had the core of a team in Houston. So I think every day, every second we have more and more initiatives. I mean, when I was a drilling engineering trainee in I think 2007, you have to make multiple runs to achieve your ultimate outcome. It's reduced now. I mean, you can drill and set casing at the same time, drop in the ball. You have expandable liners. You can do more. The technology will continue improving. Whether it's manned or unmanned is maybe the next frontier, and that's ultimately to reduce the safety exposure. And perhaps if you have more unmanned drilling activities or operational activities, let's say offshore, and you can get less people on the platform or the vessel, and and be more efficient, more safe, and more effective. Yeah, but as you can tell, I've rambled through this because I'm not a drilling engineer, so I can't improve a process I don't have a firm knowledge of.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. So the next question, we have lots of questions. So what do we see in terms of adoption of digital transformation between the larger companies and the smaller companies or the startups? So when we compare digital transformation between these various companies, the larger ones, the smaller ones, or the startup?
Well, I wouldn't know. I mean, it's been almost a decade since I worked at a much smaller company, but I would imagine. I mean, large companies are big and complex. There's a lot of alignment and adjustment and change management required to get everything set to transform. I would say it would be somewhat easier in a smaller company, but then a smaller company may not have the resources required to accelerate. So it's a mix of both. And ultimately, it also does come down to the vision and ambition of your company and the type of leadership you have per se. If you're there to survive and you like the way things are going and you like your steady cash flow and and you look to see that minimum investments keep you afloat, then you are. But if you're in dire need of transformation and you have some capex to spend to make it happen, yeah. So it's a matrix. Are you big? Are you small? Do you have the appetite? Do you not? Do you have the cash? Do you not? I mean, how heterogeneous are you as a company versus homogeneous? If you have 5 people working in a company and you farm out everything, then ultimately the cost of operations might be on the other company you farm it out to. So I can't. There's a lot of factors that go into it.
Okay, thank you. So in your own opinion, another question is, what do you see as the biggest obstacle in actually implementing a digital transformation in our industry? What's the biggest, the greatest or the largest obstacle in applying digital transformation? What is actually stopping us?
What's actually stopping us? I would say nothing. 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 It's all down to individual appetite. It's all down to putting your data governance in place, certain foundations. Because I'm sure every company in our industry has a set of processes. If not, all hell would break loose. I mean, if they choose to go through the rigorous work of attaching a data governance policy, and each company taking control of their systems and perhaps using one vendor that integrates versus a few, then it would set the basis that's needed for transformation.
Okay. So thank you very much. So so talking about Nigeria as a country, so in your opinion, what is the state of digital transformation in Nigeria as a country compared to, from your biography, we've seen that you've worked, in several places all over the world.
Yeah.
So what's your opinion on the state of digital transformation in Nigeria? And also another question states that because the government insists that the data from oil and gas activities should be restricted or stored only in Nigeria. So how is this impacting digital transformation in Nigeria, not sharing data from one company to the other within Nigeria?
Well, as far as I understand the data restrictions in Nigeria, I think it's shared outside Nigeria. So nothing's stopping Nigeria and Nigerians from setting up digital hubs in Nigeria where you could have your own in-country cloud solution, right? So in terms of regulation, but what I've seen from a few companies, and I think at the last SPE ATC event I was at, I met a couple young, bright engineers. I mean, one of which I've kept contact with. There's a lot of great stuff that's going on, right? So I would say we're there. There are a few countries that are far advanced, right, and they've got a head start, but we're not that far behind, and we're ahead of a whole lot more countries than we're behind. So I think we're doing great stuff in Nigeria.
Okay. Thank you. Another question is Google, so lots of questions. So Google says it will not help oil and gas companies with the AI models, cloud computing, etc. So what do you have to say about this? What's the implication of that? And then also the question that are the oil companies looking to hire technology graduates as a career path for have digital transformation as a career. Is that something that the companies are looking forward to?
Well, in terms of Google, I mean, I can't respond to their contracting philosophy. I mean, if they choose not to provide service to an industry as large as the oil and gas industry, then I guess they're fine with their cash flow. I do know that Amazon and Microsoft are in the cloud computing space, so those are alternatives. Also SAP, I think. Well, I'm not endorsing anyone, but I do know just from reading online journals and from prior work experiences. Now, in terms of companies hiring, I mean, first off, I recommend that you go to the company that you're looking for, check their website to see what's out there. Second, I would say that in my experience working for an oil major, I have seen and know a lot of data scientists. It's a highly valued skill to have, and I anticipate more and more um, you'll see them being increasingly relevant in our industry. However, this is not an endorsement to abandon your core principles as a petroleum engineer to become a data scientist. This is probably an encouragement to multi-skill yourself and build competence so you have the best of both worlds.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have some other one or two more questions. So when setting out an optimization transformation campaign or project, so from your experience, is it more beneficial to have professionals from the areas of concern as part of the project team, or or having the project team as a standalone, which then interacts with these professionals? So in your opinion, what is more beneficial?
I mean, what would be beneficial is always having people that actually know what the process and are grounded in that industry there. What you might want to do is isolate those people for a few weeks at a time. I mean, if you think in the agile methodology, isolate them, separate them, get them into pods, and get them working on a focused deliverable over maybe a short duration, maybe 3-4 weeks per se. But you will always need the professionals. The thing about transformation is, first of all, when you choose to transform, it's a list of 2 things, max, maybe 3. It's not a list of 100 things. The surest way for you to fail at transformation is attempting to do 100 things at once. Right? Second is you've got to be able to step out of the day-to-day, right? For you to visualize and bring that kind of transformative change. I've worked on 2 major transformation projects in the last 5 years. One I did as part of my day job. The other I was ring fenced. The one I did as part of my day job failed. The one where I was ring fenced, isolated, where I could put and pour my heart and soul into it to get it going, was successful. And it wasn't just me; everyone in the team was ring fenced. So we came in with our core technical knowledge, and for a short period of time, we worked on a deliverable.
Okay, thank you very much. So a few more questions. So as a reservoir engineer, which you had, I'm one as well. So would you prefer the use of artificial intelligence to model like neural networks, or to use the current means of physical modeling?
Come again?
So as a reservoir engineer,
Yes.
would you prefer the use of artificial intelligence for modeling, like using neural networks, or to use the current means of physical modeling, the traditional modeling, the reservoir modeling?
It's up to you. I'm a traditionalist. Last time I ran a model was 2011. So I guess I ran it the traditional way.
Okay.
Yes, I'm avoiding the question.
Okay. So another question is, are you aware of sort of processes we should put in place to protect our data, in terms of privacy concerns with all these new digital initiatives, especially when it comes to dealing with high volumes of data? So what sort of processes needs to be put in place to protect our data?
Well, now we're getting into the deep IT technical knowledge. I wouldn't be able to advise. I would probably ask you to speak to your IT professional in the company that you work with. But I do know that there almost every vendor has assurances in place to safeguard your information. Now, is it 100% safe? No, if you watch the news, you know nothing's 100% safe. But there are checks and assurances to at the basic level keep your data safe from low level attempts. Yep. Hello? Hello?
I think,
Oh,
Nike, you're
apologies.
currently on mute.
Yeah.
Yes, I just realized that. Apologies about that, and I've been talking. So thank you so very much. So we have to stop here for today. Thank you so much. You can see how it's been very interactive with loads of questions. So we would like to say a very big thank you to you. You know, you've really demonstrated a high level of passion. You know, you're passionate about digital transformation, and I hope that everything we've learned today, hopefully we'll be able to put it into practice. And we would also like to thank all our participants for their time. I'm sure that you've taken maybe not one, at least more than one thing that you've learned today, and that you are going to like a take home, and you're going to implement that. So thank you very much. So, but before we go, please, we would like to encourage us all to stay in touch with SPE. In terms of our membership, just 1 minute, please. Okay. So for inquiries on SPE registration or membership renewal, please let's go to SPE Lagos. Let's email spelagos@gmail.com. spelagos@gmail.com. Okay. And for membership benefits, let's visit www.spe.org. The website is shown as well. Please connect with us, continue to connect with us with SPE Lagos section on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, email, website. So we wish you a pleasant afternoon. Thank you very much for your time. Okay.
All right, thanks, guys.
Okay. So bye for now and see you next time. Bye.